The polls open in about 24 hours in this huge, high-stakes midterm election. And breaking news, the final CNN poll of where the race stands, here it is. Democrats hold a sizable double-digit lead over Republicans, 55 to 42%. That's a 13-point edge for Democrats on which party that voters say they will select tomorrow. That is a bigger margin than when Republicans took over in 2010, though smaller than the last time Democrats flipped the House in 2006.
And President Trump's approval rating is down 2 points from last month to 39%. This is the worst pre-midterm approval rating for any president since Eisenhower. Democrats could benefit from a massive gender gap. Women favor Democrats 62% to 35%. Men are about evenly divided, 49% back the Republican, 48% the Democrat in their district.
On the issues, health care is the big one with Democrats. 71% of Democrats consider it to be extremely important, compared with 37% among Republicans. For Republicans, 64% say immigration is extremely important. Just 44% of Democrats see it that way. 60% of Republicans call the economy extremely important. That is what some Republicans would like to see the president focused on. Politico even reports that Paul Ryan, the House Speaker, called the president, imploring him to focus on the economy and not immigration and divisive rhetoric. One senior Republican even told Politico, Trump is hijacking the election. But the president, he sees it differently.
They all say, speak about the economy, speak about the economy. Well, we have the greatest economy in the history of our country. But sometimes it's not as exciting to talk about the economy, right?
All right, joining us now, we have our CNN political analysts, David Gregory, Jackie Kucinich, Washington Bureau Chief for the Daily Beast, Scott Jennings, a former special assistant to President George W. Bush, and Bakari Sellers, a former South Carolina House member. We're going to need a bigger table, okay, before this is all over. It's so great to be with all of you. It's really exciting here in Washington. So, David Gregory, when you hear the president say there, it's just not as exciting to talk about the economy as it is to talk about all of his sort of inflammatory rhetoric about invaders. I mean, that is really telling.
Yeah, I mean, it's a reminder, not that we needed one, that in his mind, he's less the president of the United States and more the producer of the politics of this country. I mean, he really does think, and he thinks out loud. But, well, my producers say I should talk about the economy, but what's really exciting are these other issues that I focused on. But, this is such a serious election because the country is so divided. There's so much money that's been poured into this midterm race, unlike anything we've ever seen before. And I was thinking about it. This is far more about who we are, what we're afraid of, than what we believe or what we think the government ought to do. It is a referendum on the president. It is a reflection of how people feel about his tone, about his leadership, and about what scares people in the country on either side. There's a lot of energy in either way, and we're playing on two different battlegrounds, right? So if you're a Democrat, you're those divisions that were really cemented, they were there already, but that Trump really cemented in 2016 are playing out here, where his strengths are in rural America, as opposed to Democrats who are playing in suburbs, closer to cities where they have advantages. All of that is on the table.
Dan Balls, our friend of the Washington Post, wrote yesterday, this is an election about who we are. I think you're right. Jackie, I want you to look over to that side of the table. You have Democrat Bakari Sellers over there, Republican Scott Jennings. You look at our poll, a 13-point edge for Democrats. Which one of those guys would you rather be this morning?
Oh, Bakari Sellers.
So I think this poll obviously is better for Democrats looking at it, but I think it does depend on where you live. You mentioned the immigration issue. You can tell where it's working. Someone like a Marsha Blackburn in Tennessee is talking about immigration nonstop. In other places in the country, you won't hear that. You don't hear even Rick Scott talking about it as much as you do Marsha Blackburn. In the House, David Bratt, he's someone who's been he's in Richmond, Virginia, someone who's been a immigration hardliner. He's talking about it more. So I really, but in some of those suburban districts, you're not going to hear anyone talk about immigration. They're going to be talking about the economy. So I really do think, and healthcare, of course, you're Democrat and some Republicans saying that they're going to protect pre-existing conditions, which, as we know, the bill they passed in the House did not. It really is going to come down to where you live and who you're talking to, particularly those suburban women with college degrees.
Bakari, you're feeling good about being Bakari Sellers this morning.
When is he ever not feeling good?
But the problem, I think, for Democrats is that in the generic ballot, they win by a 13-point lead. But when you put an actual human being behind that D, a real person, it actually goes down.
Yeah, that's why polls, and I think we all learned, because I think that the six of us here probably would have said, based on polls and other data and everything we knew in snapshots in time, 2 years ago today, that Hillary Clinton would have been president of the United States. And so we missed that, and we missed the surge. And I think that there's a lot of surge that we probably are missing in these polls. Many of that looks like 18 to 29-year-olds who are voting at unprecedented rates. But what I will say, and what I will push back on, is as much as people want to make this a two Americas type race, be cautious on that, because on Tuesday night, I think people will be surprised when Democrats win the governor's mansion in Ohio, when they win the governor's mansion in Wisconsin, when they win the governor's mansion in Minnesota. And so when you start to look at where Democrats will actually win these races, this two Americas and Democrats only playing on the coast, that theory may be disrupted just slightly, because Democrats are running extremely strong in Wisconsin in beating Scott Walker. Not just the Stacey Abrams and the Andrew Gillums, but Democrats have actually had a good set of candidates this go round. And these candidates are unique because they're not national Democrats. To your point, when you put a D behind them, these candidates fit their particular states. They fit their districts that they're running in.
I think Scott is jumping the gun. He's surprised on Monday morning, not Tuesday night, about what you just said. Surprised and bemused somehow.
Well, I mean, let me just translate what Bakari just said from my point of view. The Democrats who are doing well in these middle American states aren't able to run on the national Democratic platform. Therefore, they're able to do better. Look what Mike Braun is doing in Indiana. Look what Claire McCaskill is doing in Missouri. Not Mike Braun, Joe Donnelly. If those Democrats win, it's because they ran away from their party. To your point, when you put an actual D behind it,
Actual name behind it.
behind the name, they have to separate themselves. So I think that our poll this morning is a bit of an outlier from the other national polls. I think when you drill down into the battleground districts, it gets much tighter. And I would just say about the economy for Republicans, it is the signature accomplishment of this administration. It is the signature accomplishment of this Congress.
Why aren't they talking more about that?
And honestly, I mean, look, I understand for intensity's sake, immigration does matter to some Republicans, but the economy is tied to health care. It's tied to how you feel about the future of the country. It's tied to so much of the aspirational messaging that you would want to be running on to close a campaign. If I were a Republican, I'd have economy on the air. I mean, if you picked up
he just said it was boring.
I know, but if you picked up a newspaper this weekend, there were like several paragraphs in the paper that looked like they could have been written by the Republican National Committee.
But what's going to get voters out. And I think Bakari's point is well taken, but I actually don't think the Two Americas idea is about Democrats just playing well on the coast. I think look at where the president has gone and where hasn't he gone. So if you have these suburban districts that are so close, where the president's so unpopular, he's basically ceding all of that ground. And where he's going are western states, rural areas, or states, if you look at the Senate map. I mean, in Missouri, where Claire McCaskill is having to talk about immigration because of the politics of Missouri, that's where he's trying to shore up support to try to keep the Senate in Republican hands, which he will no doubt define his victory.